On business news tonight, Nigeria's equities market hits historic high as the benchmark index crosses the 68,000 level for the first time.
On sports news tonight, the Super Eagles will on Wednesday kickstart training for Sunday's Africa Cup of Nations final qualifying match against Sao Tome and Principe at the Godswill Akpabio International Stadium in New York.
From Abuja, the nation's capital, Department of State Services raises an alarm over alleged plans by some persons to stage violent protests in some parts of the country.
And in international news from London, Brice Nguema, the leader of Gabon's military junta, has been sworn in as the nation's interim president.
In less than 48 hours on Wednesday, September the 6th, the Presidential Election Petition Court will give its verdict in the petitions challenging the victory of President Bola Tinubu in the February 25th election. The Allied People's Movement, as well as the presidential candidates of the Labour Party and the People's Democratic Party, had petitioned the tribunal seeking to nullify the result of the presidential election. The Registrar of the Court of Appeal, Umar Bangari, who confirmed the date in a statement today, also said that in a bid to promote transparency, the proceedings of the court will be open to live broadcast by interested television stations. Among several issues, the petitioners contended that President Tinubu and his vice, Kashim Shettima, were not eligible to contest the presidential poll. They also submitted that since President Tinubu failed to secure 25% of votes cast in the Federal Capital Territory FCT, he should not have been declared winner. The tribunal had earlier reserved its judgment on August 1st, saying the date for the verdict will be communicated later. Now, speaking of the President Bola Tinubu has held a closed meeting with the Minister of Defense, Mr. Mohammed Abubakar, and the Minister of State for Defense, Mr. Bello Matawalle, alongside the service chiefs. This is the first time the President will be meeting with the ministers and the service chiefs together. The purpose of the meeting, which lasted for about an hour, was not disclosed. And later in the day, the President also met with the Global Vice President of software company Oracle, Mr. Andres Garcia Arroyo, at the Presidential Villa. A statement issued after the meeting states that the President welcomed the company's commitments to Nigeria's civil service reform process and data management sector, as he cited Oracle's success in automating the Lagos State payroll system during his tenure as governor.
Nowadays, there are a lot of examples about how applying technology could help to the governments. But to go to common sense and to go to examples, okay, we have seen, like, for example, nowadays we are capable to release accurate data, okay, to really review which are the budgets, okay, if already review which is the expenditure and the capacity of expenditure that the government continue has, okay, in real time, and going to a specific process. For example, let's go to the procurement one. So if we could be able to have the visibility about what is procuring the different entities, able to streamline and to save costs. So these are real examples, okay, applicable examples that could bring a lot of value and benefits, okay, to the Nigerian government.
And now to labor matters. The Minister of Labor and Employment, Simon Lalong, is appealing to the leadership of the Nigeria Labour Congress to shelve its planned two-day warning strike, which is expected to commence tomorrow. Speaking at a news conference in Abuja, the Labour Minister told journalists that the federal government is already taking steps to address all the demands of the organised labour, maintaining that embarking on the planned industrial action will be detrimental to ongoing efforts to reposition the nation's economy. The leadership of the NLC had on Friday declared a nationwide warning strike for Tuesday and Wednesday, after which an indefinite industrial action will follow if the federal government fails to look into their demands.
It has become pertinent to appeal to the leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, to suspend its intended 2 days warning strike, as such action would be detrimental to the gains already been recorded on our course to securing a greater future for Nigerian workers and citizens at large. Furthermore, I would request that the comrade leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress give this government some time to settle and address the issues on the ground holistically. It should be realized that the cabinet of this administration was only recently sworn in by Mr. President, and all cabinet members have hit the ground running. Therefore, the issues raised by the leadership of the NLC are some issues that I and the Honorable Minister of State for Labor and Employment are being briefed upon. On the issue of subsidy removal, palliative measures are already being handled and implemented, beginning with the state and the local governments. The issue of the review of minimum wage, which was promised by the President, will also receive attention so as to ensure that the Nigerian worker is not adversely affected by the challenges of the moment. Earlier, Mr. President had directed the purchase of CNG-powered buses and implementation of the policy for the conversion of petrol cars to gas as a way of reducing the cost of energy for transportation. In the course of the coming weeks, additional measures will be announced, having consulted with the leadership of the organized labor and key stakeholders.
History has been made in Lagos and indeed Nigeria as a whole as the first metro rail transport begins commercial operation in the state today. The first phase of the rail line extends from the Marina area of the state to Mile 2, with 5 stations located in Marina, National Theatre Igomu, Alaba and Orile, on the corridor towards the border with Benin Republic. Our correspondent Darido joined the ride.
The iconic Marina station is the takeoff point. Invited guests and others who have indicated interest in joining the governor on this maiden commercial ride are here. The governor arrives at the terminal of the Blue Line, runs through the ground rules for passengers who will be using the service. The Cowrie card, an automated fare collection system already in use in Lagos, gives every passenger's access to the train. And a trip from Marina to Mile 2 costs less than 500 naira because the fare is subsidized. The inaugural ride is scheduled for 9 a.m. The governor gets on board and the train is en route to Mile 2 on schedule. It's a packed train on this inaugural ride with the governor on board. This metro line is expected to convey 250,000 Lagosians on a daily basis, and that's the first phase of the Blue Line. When the project is completed, 500,000 Lagosians will be moving from Marina to Okokomaiko on a daily basis. The third rail, the yellow one, will power the train when it becomes fully operational. The visibly excited governor speaks about how the train service will run.
I'm not only excited, everybody on this train is excited, and this is promise made, promise kept. We're starting with the peak hours, movement, and I'm told we'll have a small lay and we'll go on the peak hour again. I think from Lamata's time schedule, they're starting from 9 o'clock till 12 o'clock, right? And they will, because it's off-peak, they'll wait again till 4 o'clock in the evening, and they'll run the operations again till 7 or 8 o'clock. So for them to be able to gather traffic.
He speaks on the second phase of the Blue Line and the completion timeline for the Red Line.
The Red Line is going to be completed before the end of this year, by the grace of God. Well, about 95, 96% in all of. So, for the Red Line, we'll have over bridges. So we're going to start commissioning the bridges maybe by the end of this month, so that passengers and vehicles can start moving on those bridges from, Ikeja along to Yaba Bridge to Ebute Metta Bridge to Mushin Bridge and all of them. So we're going to open the bridges for vehicles to start moving on top, so that will begin the signalization that Red Line is coming up. Right, we're almost completing the retrofitting of the trains. And, they have also started recruitment of train operators, of train managers and all of that. Then we will start the unveiling of the various stations themselves,
Are you serious? The journey is less than 30 minutes to and fro, smooth.
In fact, it's everything we've been yearning for, asking for. This will bring serious relief to Lagosians when it comes to commuting from one point to another point. The governor of Lagos State, Jide Sanwo-Olu, has done fantastically well for putting this project together and making it come to fruition.
The 5 stations spanning 13 kilometers is the first phase of the 27 kilometers blue line, expected to be propelled by electricity passing through the tracks. The state government says the advocacy to get the public properly informed about the danger of trespassing must continue. Dari Idu, Channels Television News.
And to Edo State, South Nigeria, where the state government is seeking the cooperation of newly elected local government chairmen in the state for all-round development. State Governor Mr. Godwin Obaseki asks the new officials to look inwards and explore measures that will help build roads which will form alternatives to the deplorable federal government roads, which he says are a threat to the state's economic development. He made the remarks while swearing in chairman-elect of 18 local government areas who were declared winners in Saturday's election.
I expect you to be creative and focus on the key policies and programs that are most important to us at this time. Today, we are in crisis in our country. What is hurting Edo the most is the advantage we have in terms of our location of being at the core of the country and therefore being connected with a lot of federal roads or roads owned by the federal government. The federal government, as you know, today lacks the capacity to manage itself, not to talk about build its roads. So it will take a while, if ever, for them to be able to build those roads. But fortunately, we have other connections. So our priority with you should be to design and work with the state government to build alternative state roads. Infrastructure is important. We should be able to move our people, their goods and their services, so that we can have development. And when we build those roads, they will be barricaded and restricted for use.
In part 2, after the break, Department of State Services, DSS, raises the alarm over alleged plans by some persons to stage violent protests in parts of the country. Well, that's in a moment. So stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Presidential election petition court sets Wednesday, September the 6th as Judgment Day in the petition filed by the Allied People's Movement and the presidential candidates of the Labour Party and the People's Democratic Party, challenging the election victory of President Bola Tinubu. President Tinubu meets with nation security chiefs behind closed doors before his trip to India. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu launches Nigeria's first metro rail transport, which begins commercial operations in the state, starting with the Blue Line. And Brice Nguema, the leader of Gabon's military junta, is sworn in as the country's interim president. The National Assembly Elections Petition Tribunal sitting in Ikeja, Lagos, has upheld the election of Jesse Okejo Onwakolusi of the Labour Party as a duly elected House of Representatives member representing Constituency 2, Oshodi Solo, Lagos. In a unanimous decision, the tribunal dismissed the petition filed by the All Progressives Congress's Ganiyu Johnson. The three-man panel, led by Justice Abbas Abdullahi, held that the petition lacked the legal right to meddle or interfere into the conduct of the primaries of a political party when he is not a member or an aspirant in the said primaries. The other members of the panel are Justice Okonokon and Justice Esther Aluku. Honorable Ganiyu Johnson, a former commissioner for Works and Infrastructure, had served the people for the constituency for the last 4 years after winning the APC ticket in 2019. He lost his re-election bid to Labour Party's Oando Kolusi, who polled 29,386 votes in the election to his 16,650 votes. And ahead of the November 11th off-season governorship elections in Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo states, a civil society organization is asking the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to ensure that results are uploaded on the INEC Result Viewing Portal, that's IREV. While referring to the failure to upload the 2023 presidential election results on time, the Director of Democracy and Governance of Connected Development, Mr. Emmanuel Njoku, made the call at a media briefing in the nation's capital. He reiterates the need for INEC to stand by its word to upload the results to the IREV portal for the polling stations.
It's important that we check the appointment of those resident electoral commissioners. Situations where we see INEC, appointing recs 3 months to an election. And we saw that, and civil society cried out at that time, it shouldn't happen. Because you're bringing a rec who has never been in the field, who has never observed the election, who doesn't understand the electoral law, 3 months to an election, to run an election in a state, he will fail. So Justice Wade's report has also, in that particular regard of appointing resident electoral commissioners, that's what we're referring to, not on the whole Justice Wade's report, but as regards appointment of resident electoral commissioners.
And after a long break, proceedings resumed this morning at the coroner's inquest into the circumstances surrounding the cause of death of a 12-year-old student of Darwin College, Lekki, Sylvester Romani. The coroner, Magistrate Mikhail Kadiri, who is sitting at the Magistrates Court in Ogba, Lagos, has invited the mother of the deceased, Mrs. Sylvester Romani, to appear in court to give her evidence next Monday, September the 11th. At the proceedings today, 2 students of the college who had earlier testified gave their testimony afresh behind closed doors. Counsel to the Romani family explains why the inquest has dragged on for over 2 years.
Well, according to what we're told, some of the roommates of the deceased who were supposed to come and testify were writing the exams. That was the explanation given. And after the exams, MBA conference also took place. So the coroner is a human being as it is, so he has to let things flow the way they should flow. The mother of the disease is the only witness from what transpired in court today. Is the only witness that is left. After that, parties will be called upon to file in their respective written addresses, and the coroner will give his findings and conclusions.
For more on the news at 10, let's head over to our Abuja studio where Victor Matthias is sitting by. It's good to see you again, Victor.
Absolutely, Kaide. It's good to see you as well. Welcome to the nation's capital. The Department of State Services says it has uncovered plans by some persons to stage violent protests in parts of the country in order to discredit the federal government and security agencies over what it describes as sundry socio-economic matters. In a statement by the spokesperson of the DSS, Peter Afunaya, the agency explained that the plotters include certain politicians who are mobilizing student leaders, ethnic-based associations, youth, and other groups for the planned action. He adds that the DSS has identified the ringleaders of the plot and continues to monitor them in order to prevent any form of anarchy. The DSS advises parents and university vice-chancellors as well as heads of other tertiary institutions to discourage their children and students from engaging in acts capable of derailing public peace. And the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Mr. Nyesom Wike, has expressed concern over the incessant award of contracts in the FCT, vowing to put a halt to it. Mr. Wike, who declared this today during an inspection tour of the Jabi metropolis, Kabusa Junction in Apo District, and WASA under the Amak Local Council noted that it has become expedient to do so in order to ensure speedy completion of projects. Now, this is coming days after the minister bemoaned the level of development in the FCT, vowing to cause a change by first reverting to the Abuja Master Plan, security, reinforcement of the monthly sanitation exercise, as well as ensuring payment of taxes.
Government control has done well by making sure that those shanties have been destroyed. Having been destroyed, we are going to protect the place so that all these discounts will not go back there to mess up all we have done. Thirdly, we are here as part of the satellite towns. We are not impressed with the arrangement made by the FCT. Government cannot just cough out 85 billion naira and then the land reserves were providing all the infrastructures. You want to give it out to private developers who will now build and sell. I mean, we think that government must also participate, having provided the land and having provided the infrastructure. And so this kind of arrangement is not commendable at all. We must, if we are partnering with private individuals or developers, the common sense is that you provide the land and also provide infrastructure, and then they come and develop and then make profit. When makers, okay, we take 10%. So all these things we are going to look into it and have a proper plan. We are not going to be awarding contracts for the awarding sake. We award contracts that we know we have to finish it and then embark on new contracts. Contract leader in the FCT is something else. And as I speak to you, you don't even have up to 20% completion. Every contract abandoned because of no money. We will not encourage that.
Now, residents of Kongwalam, a community that borders Niger Republic in Daura local government area of Katsina State, are raising concerns on the impact of the border closure due to sanctions imposed against the military junta in Niger Republic. Many have left their farmland since they can no longer access their land due to the sanctions. Our correspondent Sadiq Eliasu is at the border and now reports.
5 states in Nigeria's northwest region border Niger Republic. Kongwalam in Daura local government of Katsina State is one of the border communities in the region. Young people pass time with card games as economic activities have dwindled due to the sanctions imposed on Niger Republic. Since the announcement of the border closure after the military junta in Niger Republic, the impact is not only felt in Niger, as people here lament a decline in business activities. You can imagine here to be a market day. Balamuji Tafa, a farmer and a Nigerian, finds himself in a dilemma as his farm is located within Niger Republic, rendering it inaccessible due to the sanctions.
We have a farm that is within Niger Republic. It's now very difficult for me to go there. The government has deployed new faces in the border, so they don't know us. Even though the farm is due for cultivation, I have to leave it unattended.
The border closure is also impacting small businesses around the border community.
Yes, actually now our activities are very low, below average, to the extent that before I can transact, or I can do like 200 or 150 transactions per day. But due to this problem, sometimes to maintain 20 transactions is hardly per day. So things are down, totally down.
Honestly, it is nothing to write home about because it has now crumbled to 0%. We are no longer doing anything here, honestly. We are seeking for, if there is any music, government can help us in terms of maybe palliative or just to assist the people doing business in this area. There's these people doing business in the border area. They have to come to our aid, honestly.
In a land where borders now bear the weight of the ECOWAS sanctions on Niger Republic, Sadiq Ilyasu, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria's equities market hits historic high as the benchmark index crosses the 68,000 level for the first time. That's in business news. Do join us again. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, Vice President Senator Kashim Shettima has warned all presidential aides against actions that are capable of tarnishing the image of President Bola Tinubu's administration. He gave the warning at the commencement of a retreat and sensitization program for political aides on administrative procedure and governance in the public sector in Abuja. State House correspondent Emperor Simon reports.
The Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, arrives at the Army Resource Center, Abuja, to declare open the retreat organized for presidential aides. The retreat aims at educating presidential aides on ethics of the State House, basic communication skills, and the need for confidentiality.
It is important we should discover, in the course of our lecture, the interrelationship between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. It may sound seamless, but the reality is that one is like a watchdog on the other. How do we manage information? How do we behave? How do we even comport ourselves? What are our dress codes? These are things we are here to carefully look into.
In the course of your action, if you don't need to have or to know to have any information, please don't. It's better for you. Careless talks, lousy talks are not allowed.
Taking a cue from these tips, Senator Shettima charges the presidential aides to conduct themselves in the interest of the nation.
We are here to build a nation that aligns with the aspirations we have pledged to fulfill in resonance with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's Visionary Manifesto. From this very moment, you are bound by the laws of our land in all matters of official correspondence. These laws outline the consequences for both intentional and unintended mishandling of the information entrusted to your care.
According to him, this administration seeks to serve the people.
Our mission too is clear: to uplift the lives of our citizens impartially and inspire lasting change. Leadership for us means breaking down barriers of inequality and fostering a safe, peaceful society. To truly expand educational opportunities and empower our youth with knowledge for self-reliance, we must fully dedicate ourselves to our duties within the State House.
Participants at the retreat cut across security, protocol and other aides in the presidential villa who are considered by the Vice President as representatives of the government and have the duty of projecting the image of the government wherever they find themselves. The retreat, which is organized in batches, is expected to end on the 22nd of September, when the capacity of the presidential aides is expected to have been built for the task ahead of them. Now, the take-home is that the action and the inaction of these presidential aides matter a lot to the success of the administration. From the Nigerian Army Resource Center, Abuja, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
And that's it from the nation's capital, but let's head over to Lagos, where Anne Oando is standing by with the latest from the world of business.
Thanks a lot, Victor. Hello and welcome to Business News. Let's begin in the energy sector, where one of Nigeria's leading indigenous energy solutions provider, Oando, has signed an agreement with Italian multinational energy company ENI to acquire 100% 25% shares of Nigerian Ajib Oil Company, signaling Oando's move into major oil producer role. ENI has been operating in Nigeria for about 61 years through its subsidiary NAOC, operator of OML 60, 61, 62, and 63. In 2014, Oando, listed on both the Nigerian Exchange and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, acquired ConoPhillips Nigeria assets, giving the company a 20% working interest in NAOC joint venture, which also includes the NNPC Exploration and Production Limited and NAOC. In a statement by Oando, the deal will enable the company significantly increase production. Based on 2021 reserves estimates, Oando's total reserves stood at 503.3 million barrels of oil equivalent, and this transaction will deliver a 98% increase to 1 billion barrels of oil equivalent. Other major highlights of this purchase will see Oando expand its upstream operations as the company will take over OML 60 to 63 and increase its current participating interest in the assets from 20% to 40%. Well, also, Oando's exploration assets portfolio is set to grow following the acquisition of 90% interest in OPL 282 and 48% interest in OPL 135, as well as increase Oando's ownership stake in all NEPL, NAOC, OOOL, joint venture assets, and of course, infrastructure. According to the Group Chief Executive of Oando PLC, Mr. Adewale Tinubu, the acquisition aligns with Oando's growth strategy as it marks an important milestone for the future of the energy company, bringing to bear the key role indigenous actors will play in the future of Nigeria's upstream sector to add value to local communities, stakeholders, and all its shareholders. And still in the energy sector, global oil price rose to a record high today, nearly hitting $90 a barrel mark. Global oil benchmark Brent crude rose to $89.03 a barrel for the first time in 10 months, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude rose to $85.55 a barrel. Expectations of tightening oil supplies have grown over Russia after it agreed to cut exports by 300,000 barrels per day in September, following a 500,000 barrels per day cut in the month of August. Also, Saudi Arabia is expected to roll over a voluntary 1 million barrels per day cut into October this year. We head to the equities market now. It recorded a historic moment today. The all-share index reached a new all-time high of 68,000, surpassing the previous record of 66,371.2 points, hit back in 2008. Let's hear the details from Laddie Williams.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, great way to start the week after a 3% gain to end the month of August and kick off September with a bang. The bull is obviously bulling the bear right now, no pun intended. If we look at the all-share index now, see 68,279 points, not far from the 70K level at this point, 1.11%. That's the gain we have to start the week. Market cap 37.36 trillion. Let's look at the activity chart there. Yeah, we're seeing buy pressure today in the market. Investors are quite excited. Volume, 845 million units of stocks valued at 13.1 billion. Look at the deals there, 11,934, almost 12,000 deals today. Let's look at the sectoral performance. You see it's all green. Also, banking there, 5.65% there. Consumer goods also in the green, 1.57%, thanks to stocks like Boa Foods there, adding to share price. For the banking, we see GTCO also jumping today with most of the fugas. Anyway, the index not far off now, 68K level, 70K next. Maybe that's going to happen. Let's see if the bulls can actually do this. Already we got that info. Nigeria's local bourse is the second best performing index in Africa for the third quarter of 2023. Good times. Well, that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Laddie Williams. It's back to you.
And And that's business news for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Oando. It's back to you, Coyote.
Well, thank you, Anne. The Kano state government has promised to ensure that only the right people get the palliatives being distributed to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy removal by the federal government. According to the state governor, Mr. Abba Yusuf, the intervention is targeted at 500,000 beneficiaries drawn from the 44 local government areas of the state. Mr. Yusuf was speaking during the flag-off of the distribution of the first phase of the intervention program. About 2,000 women from 4 local government areas benefited from the first phase.
I am very much delighted to be here with you for the purpose of flagging up of various intervention programs for the benefit of the less privileged in both the rural and urban areas of our dear state. We believe that this gesture will not only help in cushioning the effects of the subsidy removal and ameliorating the harsh economic conditions, but will also strengthen our fight against poverty in our dear state. We are, by this gathering, flagging up agricultural interventions by way of distribution of goats, rams, sheep, tradable water pumps for irrigation, other agricultural inputs, as well as food items distribution as palliatives to the less privileged.
And outside the country, Nigerian authorities have announced the reopening of the country's airspace for civil and commercial flights. The Nigerian junta had on August 6 closed access to the skies above, citing a threat of military invasion from neighboring countries. The decision to open the airspace, however, does not apply to military flights and other special flights, which are subject to what is described as authorization from the competent authorities. Well, Simon Pusey has more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Brice Guéma, the leader of Gabon's military junta, has been sworn in as the nation's interim president. General Guéma made his first speech as president, promising a return to power to civilians after free, transparent elections. However, he did not give any date. Crowds of civilians turned up at his inauguration, a sign there is some support for the military, but there are concerns that General Guéma's rule will be a continuation of the 55-year Bongo dynasty. He led last Wednesday's coup against Ali Bongo, toppling the president shortly after he was named winner of a disputed election. Ukraine's Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov has confirmed that he is leaving his post. Mr. Reznikov had led the ministry since before the start of Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. President Volodymyr Zelensky announced Mr. Reznikov's dismissal on Sunday, saying it was time for new approaches. Rustem Umerov, who runs Ukraine's state property fund, has been nominated as Mr. Reznikov's successor. South Korean teachers have held a rally in Seoul to demand better protection of their rights after a teacher's suicide exposed the level of stress and bullying within the job. Around 50,000 teachers gathered to shine a light on what they called widespread harassment by overbearing parents. Earlier in the day, mourners, including parents and young students, were seen laying flowers and leaving messages to a deceased teacher at a memorial altar set up in an elementary school in Seoul. Weather conditions at the Burning Man Festival in the US have eased enough to allow revelers to start leaving. Heavy rains had turned the event, held in a desert in Nevada, into a mud bath. The ground is now dry enough for vehicles to drive on it without getting stuck, and pictures show camper vans driving out of the event. Some 72,000 people had been stranded at the festival, but organisers say they are now ready for a max exodus. Taiwan has begun clean-up operations after Typhoon Haikui left a trail of destruction across the island. From mountainous areas in central Taiwan to cities on the eastern and southern coasts, residents and workers removed fallen trees, fixed broken power lines and cleared debris a day after the typhoon slammed into the island. Fire officials reported 116 injuries from the typhoon. It had knocked out power to almost 260,000 households and is expected to make landfall on the border between the Chinese provinces of Guangdong and Fujian. The UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says it is utterly wrong to blame him for failing to fix crumbling concrete in England's schools. Earlier, a former senior civil servant said the government halved the budget for school repairs in England in 2021. Some 1,500 schools have not returned surveys used to identify the crumbling concrete, leading to the Education Secretary to admit that there are potentially hundreds more schools to be identified in the weeks to come. The Spanish Coast Guard has rescued 162 migrants, including 5 women and 12 minors, off the Canary Islands. Here, a Coast Guard boat arriving at Aguinaguin port after picking up those on board a small wooden boat off the coast of Gran Canaria. The Canary Islands in the Atlantic off the coast of West Africa have become the main destination for migrants trying to reach Spain. And industry analysts say Europe's car makers have a fight on their hands to produce lower-cost electric vehicles and erase China's lead in developing cheaper, more consumer-friendly models. Daimyo said at Munich's IAA Mobility Show that its R5 EV, due out next year, will be 25% to 30% cheaper than its electric Scenic and Megane models. Chinese EV makers, including BYD, Niao and Xpeng, are all targeting Europe's EV market, where sales soared nearly 55% to about 820,000 vehicles in the first 7 months of 2023, making up about 13% of all car sales. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon. Let's begin with a football viewing experience called Guinness Match Day, recently launched by Guinness, that brings live football to consumers, removing most limitations for enjoying matches with Guinness at the heart of it. The Guinness Match Day will put the fans at the heart of the viewing experience with a state-of-the-art sound system, high-definition screens, comfortable social seating, and a Guinness 360 bar that gives fans uninterrupted views of different matches on display.
Excitement is in the air as football fans gather in Lagos to have a Guinness Match Day experience.
The match day minutes is 90 minutes, right?
The Balmoral Hall at the Federal Palace Hotel in Victoria Island, Lagos, is packed full with excited football fans. Former Super Eagles player Joseph Yobo and Daniel Amokachi also graced the occasion. Both players, who once played for Premier League side Everton, share thoughts on the matchday 4 clash in the Premiership between Arsenal and Manchester United.
Another thing after scoring is always have a good game management plan.
In such game like this, I think you don't expect, more than 1 or 2 goals.
The fans heap praises on the organizers of the event, Guinness, widely regarded as one of the most successful alcohol brands worldwide.
I feel very happy watching this match here. Guinness have done wonders, and it's good to experience this one more time.
It's been a wonderful experience altogether. Guinness trying to unite Nigerians, because football has been one uniting factor Nigerians have always had.
We found, a very strong affinity between, football occasions and also consumption of Guinness. So what we've done differently today is actually to create a big experience center, which is what we call the match day, right? For the consumers to actually converge at a particular location, socialize. You can see the fan base and also the cheering, the football fans and also meeting, top football, players in Nigeria like Joseph Yobo, the likes of Victor Ekpeba.
The Brewery Giants insist they will stop at nothing to give football fans all over the country the ultimate match day experience.
Guinness has been connecting football fans for over 279 years now, right? For us, it's really about celebrating that fandom. It's about the fans, because the fans make the game brighter for even the players. So this experience has been crafted by Guinness for the fans. It has to be an amazing, epic experience, and that's what we delivered here today, as you can see.
What we strive to do today is to be able to show people that it's possible to have an elevated viewing experience, and then using the label called Guinness Match Day. And I'm sure that with the reactions that we've had and the feedback we've gotten already today, that goal has been achieved. We've been able to show Nigeria that, you know what, we can elevate match viewing experience and let people have a near, stadium experience in an area that has been created, which is like an only Guinness can do anyway.
The live football viewing experience is in full swing in Lagos, and Guinness says that it will be rolled out to other parts of the country.
Quite an experience. Meanwhile, the Super Eagles of Nigeria will kickstart training on Wednesday ahead of the Sunday's Africa Cup of Nations final qualifying games against Sao Tome and Principe in New York. The Super Eagles have already qualified for the continent's biggest football tournament with 12 points from their previous 5 matches, but must earn at least a point to be sure of topping the group ahead of second-place Guinea-Bissau, who are on 10 points and play at home to Sierra Leone in Bissau. And veteran former Spain defender Sergio Ramos has returned to his hometown club of Sevilla after 18 years away. The 37-year-old former Real Madrid and PSG player signed a 1-year contract after passing the traditional medicals. And that's it on Sports News. Carry this back to you.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey. And the main news again. The Presidential Election Petition Court today announced that it will deliver judgment in the petition filed by the Allied People's Movement and the presidential candidates of the Labour Party and the People's Democratic Party, challenging the victory of President Bola Tinubu in the February 25th presidential election on Wednesday, September the 6th. Also today, the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, launched Nigeria's first metro rail transport, which begins commercial operations in the state, starting with the Blue Line. And that's the news at 10 for tonight, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikuli. Good night.